Fundraisers are the lifeline of nonprofit organizations and essential to the pro-life movement. Grant and Heather Glass know this quite well in both creating and implementing very successful events that directly aid Christian families seeking to adopt. They sit down with us at the intersection of Faith and Main to share insight into their efforts and to hopefully encourage others who have interest in helping such worthwhile causes.
It's where Christianity and culture meet. This is the intersection of Faith and Main. Now, here's Greg Chandler.
Okay, so Grant and Heather, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining us today. As we start out, let's just get a little bit of background information on the two of you. You've been married how long?
Since
3.5 years.
3.5.
And if I remember correctly, you moved to North Alabama almost immediately. Is that right?
Yeah, he actually accepted a job before we got married and moved up here in January of 2021.
Okay, and so that kind of pulled us into the same orbit when you became members at the Gooch Lane Church, and we kind of hit it off, and then you said, we're planning this big event, and I'll let you kind of take it from there. What was the big event that it seems like was shortly after you got married? Maybe more time went by than I thought, but it seems like it was pretty close.
It was very close. It was about after our first anniversary, actually. We've been married a whole year when this opportunity came around. And around our first anniversary, we were kind of talking about things we'd like to look into doing and being a part of. And one of those things was trying to, either volunteer more or help with charitable organizations if we could. And so we talked about doing that. And then shortly after, this opportunity basically presented itself. We didn't really go searching for it. It kind of came to us.
Yeah. So on our first anniversary, I had asked Grant kind of, was there any goals he wanted for this next year of marriage? And one of the things he had said was that he wanted us to be more giving of our time, more charitable in that way. And then we went on our 1-year anniversary, which was a cruise. We were on a, what do you call that?
The New England
The New England cruise, which we were the youngest on the boat. And so I had been wearing my Sacred Selections sweatshirt. You don't think you know anybody on a boat of that size. And I had taken it off to go to lunch, and somebody else was wearing my sweatshirt. And so I kind of went up and I was like, hey, I have that sweatshirt, and they said, oh, really? Like, we just got it in Memphis, and we had just been at the Memphis fundraiser, actually. And so it was just kind of funny. And so we had shared that story we'd taken a picture, shared that story with Dana, and she then kind of, used that. And then about a week later, she kind of came to us and said, we need somebody in the North Alabama area who's willing to maybe, kind of head up an event up there.
Yeah, so kind of tell us about Sacred Selections, about the organization, what their goals are, purposes are.
Yeah. So one of the things we really love about Sacred Selections is that they not only take care of the adoptive families, they support them, but they support the birth mothers too. So those that are choosing life, they support them throughout their whole time. And then they also, of course, are there for the adoptive families. But that's really big to them. This year, their theme was To the Work, which is based on 1 Corinthians 15:58. And it's talking about that always abounding and doing the work.
Yeah, so their goal is to get these children, needy children, into the homes of Christians. And it's my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that this is all private donations, no money coming in from government or anything like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There's sometimes businesses that support, but it's all private donations.
Yeah, so totally free of government, church. It's all just private individuals,
all separate.
which is an amazing thing. And so having been a part of a nonprofit for a number of years, I know how important fundraising is to that. So you kind of got into this in a unique way, right? And next thing you know, you're being brought on board as fundraising. So that led then to this event that you've hosted now for 3 years. So tell us a little bit about what you do, what the event's like.
So Heather is the primary coordinator, I would say, of this event. But what we do is every year we have a dinner and auction. So we have an auctioneer come in, and we have people from the community will help from mainly people we know will donate items that they think would be good for the auction. It could be a stay at a hotel or a stay at a cabin. If somebody owns a cabin that they rent out, sometimes they might donate that for a few days. Or it could be a nice piece of furniture. We have somebody in the congregation who he loves making furniture for this event and items from. He's a very good craftsman of wood, and so he donates a lot to our event. So things like that, and we have an auctioneer come in and he'll auction these items off. We also have like a silent auction where we will do other items. And then the dinner as well. So we try to make it be like a nice event for people to come out. So we have the food catered, and we try to make a really good evening for whoever decides to attend.
Yeah, so you hold this here in Huntsville, close to where you live at the Botanical Garden, which is of course, this beautiful setting, and it's a very nice meal, so enjoyable night. And it seems to have been well supported. Typically, about how many people do you have come?
Yeah, typically we have usually at least 250. We've gotten up to, over 300 as well. Um, yeah, it's been very well received in this area, so we've been super thankful for that. Um, we just love that there's that opportunity for people to come out and support, and we've been really blown away with the support we've gotten.
Yeah, and certainly kind of being on the outside looking in, I can see that of just how many people have pitched in and helped with this. So organizing something like this is obviously a huge undertaking. You mentioned you have to have the caterer, you have to have a serving staff. I guess that goes with catering most of the time. You got to have the auctioneer lined up, all of these things. So just out of curiosity, what stresses you the most about the event?
That's a big question. I think just kind of trying to make sure we're doing a good job, right? Making sure that we're both representing North Alabama in a way, but also Sacred Selections as a whole, and just kind of that Christian connection as well. So just trying to make sure that we're getting that across, and really why we're doing it, right? So just trying to make sure that that's at the forefront always of what we're doing, making sure that everybody knows, we're doing this because we are pro-life, and we want people to see that we're able to give these opportunities to act on that, to act on saying that we're pro-life. So I think that might be kind of one of the stressors, just trying to make sure we're relaying that wholeheartedly, which I think thankfully that's been going well, and that's kind of out there. But then obviously just all the coordinating, trying to coordinate so many people can sometimes be hard.
Yeah, and so the two of you, your personalities seem so complementary. Has that been helpful in organizing something to each of you bring a strength into this that maybe the other one doesn't have?
Yeah, absolutely. Grant is really good that I like when I'm stressed, I can be like, I just need you to text this person, or I just need you to look into this. And he's pretty good about, doing it. And so that's helpful too, because he'll kind of be like, well, what's stressing you? And I can share that, and he really has my back. So
And she's the go-getter. So, I try to back her up as much as I can. She's really the ringleader, but I try to support her with things like, little things like that. If she needs somebody to be texted, try to handle and help ease the burden if I can.
Yeah, well, both do such an excellent job with it. Just to watch you coordinate with each other is really really interesting to watch, to see how it functions so well. And then you have this huge event, and it goes off most of the time without even a flaw, at least that the audience can see. Right? You may have a few things behind the scene, but everything goes well. I want to return to something you said earlier. You said you've had a lot of people who've supported you. So what are some ways that people have been your support as you put on these events?
So it's really a team effort. Heather and I guess myself might be at the forefront of leading the charge, but really at the end of the day, there are tons of people behind the scenes that don't get enough recognition, that are helping with so much, from the catering to the social media to the silent auctions, the live auctions, I forgot to mention we have what we call a dessert dash. Somebody has to organize getting desserts to be brought in. There's so many people, and people probably I'm forgetting that help with the event. It's so much more than just us that um, it takes a whole team, an army. So.
And so are these people that you had to kind of go out and ask them, or did you have people coming to you and say, hey, we want to help with this. What can we do?
I'd say it's a little bit of both for sure, especially when we were kind of breaking back into it, because there was an event that had been up in North Alabama a couple years before us. So it had, people knew about sacred selections in this area and not just adopted families. But kind of knowing that there was an event being put back on. So there's definitely been a little bit of both, kind of me and Grant knowing people that have great talents that we can use, like we ask you to be our MC because you're really, eloquent in talking. And so kind of seeking those people out, and they're always very willing. And so that's been like such a huge encouragement. But then there's also been people who will come to the event and they're saying, I want to do more. Like, I love this cause. I recognize that this is kingdom work. We really want to get involved. And so it's kind of been a mix. Yeah, for sure. Of people seeking it out and then us kind of asking different people for their strengths.
And I think one of the most impressive things is that people come back the next year. A lot of times you'll have volunteers and they get scared off after the first year, but you've had some people who've been with you for all three of these who've been very helpful. So I would suspect that gives you a good deal of consistency, right?
Yeah, yes. It changes a little, fluctuates here and there, just different, things for people's lives. But we've had some definite, returners that are super helpful. And it helps too because they've already done it right once and they kind of know the ropes. So
yeah, so let's talk about how this has impacted you. This is a great cause. You've got this private organization. They're finding children in need. They're matching them up with Christian families. But for you personally, how has this impacted you spiritually? What growth have you each gotten from this as individuals?
I think one of the things for me is it's been really encouraging that we've already been talking about just seeing the people that have helped and have stepped up. They might not have otherwise, been in an opportunity to serve in this way, and yet they do. And it's really encouraging to see them use their talents for the kingdom. So that's one of my primary encouragements, I think.
yeah, I think just thinking about, I kind of touched on this earlier, but trying to think of ways to be more pro-life, just than saying, that we're against certain things, but actually having the opportunity and to act on that. And so we're super thankful to Sacred Selections for that. And we're humbled at, this opportunity to be able to do that. And so all over, there's like this network of Christians, right? That there's different fundraisers doing these. And so that's been very encouraging as well, kind of changing us in that way to see how many people are wanting to help and are helping with this great cause.
Yeah, that's really good and so uplifting to hear that, not only from the two of you, but so many who are really pro-life. They're not just talking the talk, they're going out and doing something for the cause. So I'm curious, and if this gets into matters you don't need to talk about, that's fine, but a number of the parents come to these events. Often there will be two or three families that stand up during the night, show the babies that they've adopted. What kind of interactions have you had with those families?
I mean, all obviously wonderful interactions, right? They're so thankful for this opportunity to take this child into their home and give them, this wonderful life. And a lot of them are, you just see that gratitude to the birth moms for choosing life and for choosing them, right? Because they do have to be chosen by the parents. And so a lot of times too, these families have gone through a lot to get through this to the adoption process, whether that's infertility or loss of children or, different things like that. And so they're nothing but gratitude. And that you just see that a lot in these families, in the way that they talk with you, in the way that they love their children, and in the way that they encourage others.
Yeah, that's so encouraging to hear that. So what if somebody's listening to this interview and they say, well, this is great. And maybe I should preface this with this question first. So on average, how much has each of these brought in for the Sacred Selections cause?
Our event specifically?
Yes, your event specifically.
Yeah. So on average, we've brought in about 80,000.
Okay. So here's somebody listening and they're saying, wow, I want to do this. I live in an area, we don't do anything like this. We've got people who are active. What advice would you give them?
I think first and foremost, you got to get people to rally behind you, because it's going to take more than just one person to really get this all together. As we've already talked about, it takes a whole team. So you need people that will be able to use their talents to support this event, and all the various aspects of it, if that makes sense.
I would say too, recognizing that just because we put on quite a big event, for about 250 to 300 doesn't mean that that's the only way to help. They love to highlight stories, even from kids, right? There will be kids who do lemonade stands or they do a garage sale. So they like to point that out too, right? All those little things count and add up, because it is a whole group effort. And so there's, different chapters that do different things. There's some that do trivia nights. There's some that do like a family kind of carnival. There's, barbecue nights, all that kind of stuff. And so there are different shapes and sizes that it can take. And so I would urge people to maybe consider doing something, if it's smaller, that's maybe their strong suit, to consider that as well.
Yeah. So lots of variety of people here. You might have some who could pull off a major event like this one, right? And raise a lot of money in one night. But what you're saying also is there's room for all kinds of efforts here. And you might just elaborate a little, because I thought this was an interesting story about the children who sent in money. They kind of highlighted that at your event. So you might tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there was different stories they talked about at our event specifically, one of which was a couple of kids who had gotten money for Christmas, and they were, could do anything they wanted with it. And so they put it in an envelope and they sent it in. And they said, this is for the babies. We want to give you this. And there's been other times where a child will donate money from, different things. They get money for their birthday, or they have a lemonade stand and they give it all to Sacred Selection. So, right, we learned this from kids the best sometimes, that giving can be really easy, especially if it's in your heart to give. And so we love to see that. And there's been times in years past where they had a child who had donated, and they had people match that all over the country, right? So I think he had given maybe something like $80, and so they used that, kind of saying like, well, who can match his donation? And so just to kind of help people recognize that, like, if a child can do it, like, you can also consider giving as well.
Yeah, I think that's so neat, and what a good lesson for kids to learn. Let's go back just a little bit to the auction. We touched on that earlier, but that's another way, right? Where a lot of people are saying, we've got this service or we've got this product, we'll donate that. And so do you have to recruit a lot of those people, or do they come to you, or is it kind of a mix of the two?
I would say it's a mix. Talking about the person that we know at our congregation who's a woodworker, I mean, he's very enthusiastic about it, which we really appreciate. And he's coming up to us with ideas all the time about things that he might make. And other times, yeah, we do reach out and ask companies to donate things for maybe the silent auction, or people we know that have cabins or something like that. We'll ask them to donate to the cause, and most of the time, everybody's really happy and willing to do that, because they know it's a good cause.
Yeah, that's so encouraging to hear. And certainly, as you think about your effort, other efforts, it's brought in a whole lot for Sacred Selections. And I'm sure they have shown a great deal of gratitude to people who step up and volunteer like this. So as we kind of close the interview off, just as you think back over the last 3 years, you've obviously impacted a lot of lives. These children that you've seen being adopted. As you look forward, Is this going to be something maybe you'll continue, or are you looking for other areas to do, or what are your plans going forward?
Yeah, we always kind of talk about it after the event because it is quite a big effort. And when we were talking about it the other day, one of the things that just kind of kept coming up was that we love the opportunity it gives us and others to be able to serve, and to be able to, you know, be involved in more than ways than one, right? Because we have so many different ways to do that, whether that's volunteering, giving of your time, giving of your money, or, if you have a cabin and they donate that, because we do have, people that have donated cabins, things like that for those kinds of stays and things. So we do plan to continue to do it just because we just love the organization. Like we've said, it's just such a good charity. And we thought about, like, if we didn't do it, like, where else would we, what else would we do? And not that there's not other opportunities, but we just already feel so connected to this one. And we know that the money is like going to great families, and that these families are, truly being impacted, and these child's lives are, really being impacted. And they just hit, I think, 510 adoptions in their whole time of Sacred Selections. And so we just want that to keep going.
Well, that's an amazing thing, and appreciate all of the good work you're doing. I think you're setting just a tremendous example of taking action, taking something into your own hands, pursuing it. And I know you'll be an encouragement for a lot of people who hear this, as well as those who know of your work. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this story with us.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, and glad for you to be here. This is Greg Chandler coming to you from the intersection of Faith and Main.
Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and visit our website at faithandmainpodcast.com.